Thank you for taking the time to join us for the first leg of our practice optimization series this quarter. And thank you to those of you who've managed to complete the poll that we put up on the screen for you. My name is Stuart Marais, and I look after Queensland as an investment specialist for Morningstar. I'll be your MC today, and we look forward to an engaging webinar with you. Just up front, we're going to run through some of the housekeeping slides, as always. So yeah, just to confirm that today's session has been submitted for accreditation. So we'll share those CPD details with you as soon as we receive them. Normally that's about a week or so after today's call. In addition to the CPD confirmation, you'll always get a recording of today's session. And today's session will include some practical collateral to consider including in your advice process based on the research we've done. So keep an eye out for that. Of course, we love the engagement. We love the questions. Please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen as indicated on the slide. And that way we can get back to you during the call. Please use that as opposed to the chat function today. Then just to the traditional disclaimer and to highlight that today's presentation is general in nature and not to be seen as active advice. We leave that responsibility to you as trusted advisors with your clients and having an understanding of their individual needs. As such, we have not considered any individual person's objectives, financial situation, or particular needs in today's presentation. Individuals should, of course, seek advice and guidance and consider whether that advice is appropriate in light of their goals, objectives, and current situation. Please do refer to our financial services guide for more information if needed. And that is available on our public domain at morningstarinvestments.com.au/FSG. And then before we kick off today, we can look at the results of that poll and the question that was posed, just in terms of the relevance of today and for it as to you as advisors. So, well, those of you that are advisors, the question posed was, does your current position involve being a client-facing advisor? I think no surprise here that the lion's share of you do interact with the front line or at the coalface with the decision-making authority. And then obviously it just ratchets down to those that perhaps are less client-facing. I think today will really resonate with those of you that deal with clients, but obviously in our profession we all have a role to play in that regard. And that leads well into today's update and the million-dollar question itself, which is really that of what makes clients hire their advisors. So for those of you who aren't familiar with our client-centric approach, we do partner with advisors and advisor groups across 3 pillars, namely practice optimization, behavioral coaching, and investment solutions. This integrated partnership aligns clients, advisor, and practice goals to achieve what we feel is a personalized, differentiated value proposition to grow a modern advice practice, and of course, to serve more clients better. Today, we return our attention to the ever-present and all-important behavioral realm of financial advice practice, and more specifically to the behavioral forces at play when clients appoint you as their financial advisor. This is a look at the other side of the coin following our June webinar, which considered the factors that make clients end an advice relationship. So to walk through the results of this most recent research, I'd like to hand over to today's distinguished presenters. Samantha Lamas is a senior behavioral researcher, and Dr. Danielle Labotka is a behavioral scientist with her PhD in psychology, and they join us from our Chicago office. Beyond the market-leading research that our behavioral team is known for, today's takeaways do include some practical application and that can assist you to align best practice with what clients regard as the most important when making decisions. So I think on that note, Samantha and Danielle, I'd like to welcome you to the floor and just also wish you a good evening as I know you're dialing in from Chicago.
Thank you. And good afternoon to everybody who is on the call, as it I'm sure is lunchtime for you all. So in our research, as our behavioral insights group and Morningstar, we try to understand investor decision making, which often involves examining how investors work with an advisor. As you well know, the advisor-client relationship is the bedrock for successful financial planning, but these relationships are complex and can vary depending on the client involved. So in the research we're going to be talking about today, we looked at the very beginning of the advisor-client relationship, specifically why investors hired their financial advisors to gain further insights into what clients are looking for in their financial advisor. So in the next slide, we have this very simple question we're asking, right? Why do clients hire an advisor? And I think many of you may feel that there is a very simple and obvious answer. They have a financial need that they need to resolve. And as you can see here, there is some research that supports the idea that people are seeking help with specific issues. But we know that the value of an advisor goes beyond the financial services they provide their clients. In particular, a study by Vanguard sought to quantify the value advisors add through their practice and found that behavioral coaching could account for somewhere around 200 basis points for a typical client. However, just because we know that advisors add value through things like behavioral coaching doesn't mean that clients always acknowledge that themselves. For example, previous research that we've done asked clients to rank how much they value the different services that financial advisors provide to their clients. And we found that the item that maps onto behavioral coaching here, which is, quote, helps me stay in control of my emotions, unquote, was ranked last by investors. In fact, we see again that financial issues, in this case, financial goals, come to the top for investors when they think about the value of advisors. But does that mean they don't consider emotional concerns when they hire their advisor? To answer this question, we asked investors what drove them to hire a financial advisor. We looked at both specific reasons investors gave and whether these reasons tended to be financial or emotional to gain insights on multiple levels. So in our study, we asked participants who had financial advisors to list some of the reasons why they had hired their advisor. Now, this question was open-ended, allowing us to collect people's thoughts in their own words. And there are benefits to asking people this question in an anonymous survey format. For one, respondents were able to take the survey at their own pace, allowing them to think carefully about their responses. Secondly, having the privacy to answer these questions helps dampens the effect of social desirability bias. Social desirability bias is our tendency to respond to a question in a way that conforms to societal norms or others' expectations. As such, an anonymous survey may help us get more honest and complete answers, since in the real world, investors may provide more socially acceptable responses when meeting with an advisor because they want to fit the expectations of those in the room, such as the advisor or their spouse and other loved ones who may be present. So to gather our data, we featured this question in 3 different studies that we ran in 2021 and 2022 on the Prolific platform. In all, we collected 623 responses from individuals who had a financial advisor, which works out to be about 21% of everyone we sampled. For this analysis we're going to be talking about today, we randomly selected 312 responses to explore deeper through a manual coding process. As is expected from an advisor-client sample, our respondents were older and wealthier than your general population. Okay, so let's take a look at how this data shakes out. As you can see from this small sample of responses, the answers that people give can vary quite a bit, both in form and in content. Some are quite rich and others are more to the point. Either way, we are tasked with making sense of all of it in a uniform system. To do this, we looked to both industry and academic research to identify common motivations behind an investor's decision to hire an advisor and created this master list of those motivations. I'll give you a moment to read them over. So we tried to provide a good range of motivations, which we believe we did, since very few responses fell into our other categories, which are listed at the bottom, but we're always interested to hear what you think based on your own experiences. So because of our interest in this study, you can see that we've incorporated both financial and emotional factors that a person may consider when hiring a financial advisor. Outside of our other categories, we also have a category that doesn't fit into this emotional financial breakdown, and that's the moved away response, which just refers to answers that indicated that an investor had to hire their current financial advisor because someone, either the client or the advisor, had moved. So for reference, here's a longer description of each category. And I believe that these slides will be made available to you afterwards, so don't panic about reading all of them right now. But I'm showing you them because these more detailed explanations are important to understand what we are really looking for in participant responses, because it's quite specific in a way that our broader category labels don't capture. For example, the category return performance driven factors does not refer to people who say they got an advisor because they wanted to improve their returns in general. Instead, this category refers to investors who said they hired their advisor because they thought that that advisor had demonstrated that they could get them the returns they wanted. Somebody who said something about just wanting to improve their returns would fall under the category of specific financial needs and goals. We then went through each of the responses and manually categorized them into one or more motivation categories. To ensure the quality of the manual coding, we first established something called inter-rater reliability. And that just means that the coders are aligned with each other such that they would code any given response the same way as the other coder. And while there are a number of ways to calculate this, I think kind of the most informative one for our purposes is that we found that in a subsample of 20% of responses, our coders agreed with each other on their coding 98% of the time. So let's look at this example to kind of give you a more illustrative sense of how this coding works. So this investor says that they hired their financial advisor to explain the complexities of it all, to help me maximize my assets, to save me time and worry, to save me on taxes, and to sell me insurance. So you can see that this investor gave numerous reasons for hiring their advisor. And as such, the response actually was placed into a couple of different categories. So there are a few things that they said that fell under the category of specific financial needs and goals, like wanting to save on taxes or to get help with their insurance needs. Note that these responses don't fall under quality of financial advice and services because they do not refer to the quality of the services the advisor provided, just that they wanted these issues addressed. So they also indicated that they had a need for behavioral coaching and noting that they wanted somebody who could explain the complexities of their finances to them. This falls into behavioral coaching as it points to the need for an advisor to act as a financial teacher. Finally, they demonstrated client discomfort handling finances and noting that they wanted somebody who could save them worry. This speaks to the discomfort they feel in managing their finances themselves. So after going through all these responses, we were able to determine how frequently each motivation appeared. On the screen, on the next slide, we had the most common reasons for hiring an advisor. We found the two most cited reasons investors hired their advisors were client discomfort handling financial issues and specific financial needs or goals, both of which were represented in 32% of participant responses. Other common reasons rounding out the top 5 included behavioral coaching, which accounted for 17%, recommendations from friends and families, which accounted for 12% of responses, and quality of relationship, which accounted for 10%. As you can see, we have color-coded the bars by whether they are emotional or financial reasons. And the examples here give you a sense of how those emotional and financial answers kind of differ. So the financial responses are fairly straightforward. People mentioned looking for help with retirement planning, annuities, investing, etc. Meanwhile, those emotional responses covered a wide range of feelings and desires. We see people talking about wanting better confidence, wanting to feel secure, not liking things, not knowing things, lacking discipline, wanting a sane voice, wanting someone who understands them. So what we do see here is that specific financial issues rose to the top as one of the main concerns driving hiring decisions, which was expected based on everyone's experiences and previous research. However, we also see that a lot of the top of the reasons were actually emotional in nature. And in fact, when we look at how many responses fell into emotional versus financial categories, we saw that 60% of responses gave emotional reasons compared to 40% that gave financial ones. And this result actually surprised us because, based on previous research, we did think that financial issues would be more common than emotional ones when we're talking to investors about why they hired their advisor. Moreover, when we looked at why people fired their advisor in another study, which was the previous webinar that we did, we found the exact opposite pattern, wherein investors tended to cite financial reasons for firing their advisor more than they cited emotional ones.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. So now let's talk about takeaways. So overall, what does this mean for you as you're working with your clients, as they're in your office, as you're trying to figure out their financial plan? So takeaway number one. Takeaway number one is just how big of a role emotions play in hiring decisions. So this kind of just solidifies the importance of that emotional aspect of an advisor's relationship with their client. As we saw in our research, as Danielle just mentioned, these emotional factors play a huge role in hiring decisions, even more so than these, traditional objective financial factors. So when you look at the seven-step financial planning process, so this is just from the CFP website, nothing too new here. But most advisors are kind of on board with the idea that they have to be this emotional support person throughout the financial planning cycle. So whether that be as a financial teacher, coach, therapist, behavior coach, whatever you want to call it, most advisors know that they need to play that role. But our research kind of adds to this role because what we find is that not only do you have to be that emotional support person throughout the cycle, but before the cycle even begins. So when you're talking to a prospective client for the first time, you have to be able to address their discomfort handling financial issues, their need for behavioral coaching. You have to show the client that you have the financial expertise to, get the job done, help them with their financial need, but also that emotional intelligence to foster that high quality relationship with them. So that may sound hard to do, but hopefully in the next couple of slides, we'll give you some tips on how to do that. The second takeaway here is that there's a difference between what people say they need and what they actually need. So going back to the value of advice research that Danielle mentioned earlier. So in this study, we asked investors what they valued most in a financial advisor. We gave them this list of common attributes, asked them to rank them from most important to least important, then calculated the average rankings for a representative sample. And as Danielle mentioned, at the very bottom of the list is this emotional support role, right? Behavior coaching. It helps me stay in control of my emotions. However, in our current study, we kind of find contradictory results, right? When we looked at why people hire an advisor, emotions tend to come out. Now, we think this is a product of how we asked the question. So in our current study, as Danielle mentioned, people were able to write down their thoughts in their own words, completely anonymous, the privacy of their own homes, at open-ended time, etc. And what came out happened to be very emotional. So what this means is that the chances are a client is going to walk into your office and say they need help with this, very objective financial need. They need retirement advice. They want to take care of a bequest, etc. But chances are they're not going to tell you that they need emotional support. And that's because that puts them in a very powerless position. And they're not going to do that with a complete stranger. They probably won't do that with people they know very well. Um, but we know that 3 in 5 clients are actually going to hire you for an emotional reason. So this just goes to show the importance of addressing that emotional need in a subtle way so that you're not turning people off, so that those efforts don't backfire. But also throughout the relationship with the client, kind of getting them on board with the value of this emotional support role that you provide. This unique value that advisors can bring to the table that can't be replicated by a robo advisor, chat GPT, etc. So it's clear advisors have their hands full. takeaway number 3 is that how we say it matters. So, as I kind of referred to in the previous slide, I don't suggest that you go out there and say to a prospective client that they need emotional support and that you can provide it to them. That's probably going to backfire. And that's because many clients don't acknowledge, they refuse to acknowledge, or they're not aware that they need that emotional support. So you have to present it in a subtle way. And previous research can kind of help out here. So going back to the value of advice research that I talked about earlier. So we went back to this research and we tested out different ways of describing this emotional support role, this behavioral coaching. So we came up with 4 other ways of saying helps me stay in control of my emotions, and then reran the study. So we gave people the same list of attributes, asked them to rank them from most important to least important, but people were randomly selected to see 1 of 5 different versions of this one attribute. And then we calculated the average rankings. And here were our results. So this graph here shows the distribution of rankings from most important to least important. That dot is the average ranking. And the ranking, the axes here are a little bit confusing. So ranking of 1 means that it's very valuable, and the opposite for the other side of this, the spectrum. So first off, you can see that our original phrasing and the slight variation were pretty universally disliked. So at least we were able to replicate our results. But the other 3 versions kind of moved the needle a little bit. So we didn't get everyone on board. There's no magic wand, but just changing how we describe this value that advisors bring, that advisors uniquely bring, it seemed to get more people on board. It seemed to help people not get so defensive and instead sort of acknowledge the importance of emotional support. So what can we learn from these 3 other versions? So 1, using clinical language seems to help. So helps you make financial decisions with a cool head. Seems to get more people on board. Providing an example of panic selling during downturns. I think we can all sort of relate to this, you know, sinking gut feeling that we all experience when the markets are going a little haywire. And clarifying that these are issues that we all face. So helps me avoid common behavioral mistakes. So just clarifying that this is not something unique to this person, that they're not dumb or whatever, that these are issues that we face as human beings. Financial decisions are hard for us. They don't come naturally to us, and we tend to fall into our biases when making these sorts of decisions.
Samantha,
Okay. Oh, sure. Yes.
not to derail you, I think there's a good question to address that that would be better to address now versus at the end. So maybe you can just give your view here. The question is, do you believe the recent shift in emotional drivers to engage an advisor is a result of the real or perceived issues investors have been faced with since the beginning of 2020? I think you've answered some of that in the way some of the the research has been conducted. But certainly, given the results that were initially obtained versus more recent results, do you think it's got anything to do with what investors have been through? And I think in large that talks to a COVID period as well.
Oh, that's an excellent point. I hadn't considered that. Um, Yeah, so there's no way we can know for sure. So whatever I say now is just my own opinion, but I definitely
Yeah,
think it could have played a role. I mean, the pandemic did strange things to people. It kind of stuck people in isolation and made them think a bit more. So maybe they started to realize their own
mm,
um, problems making financial decisions on their own. And what came out, again, was very
yeah,
emotional.
sure.
That's a great way of thinking about it. If only we had run the study on purpose, that would have been a great study.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So we're not going to leave you there. So in this next section, we're going to talk about how you can use this research in your communications. So as part of this, we created an exercise to help advisors address both emotional and financial needs in your first interactions with clients, with prospective clients. So whether that be a mission statement, marketing material, talking points, in the example, we use a value prop. Um, we're just trying to incorporate some of these insights and make it actionable for advisors. So as always, we're open to feedback. if this works, if it doesn't work, how we can make it better. We're all ears. And just one note that this exercise paper itself really is in PDF format, and we will be sending it over later. So you don't have to hurry up to write anything down. You can just listen and hopefully learn something. Let's see. Okay. So the exercise revolves around using the top three categories we find drive hiring decisions. So those were client discomfort, behavioral coaching, and specific financial needs. So step one is about identifying. So we suggest taking a step back, maybe taking a step back from the screen, getting a piece of paper and pen, very old school, and writing down all the things you do for your clients. So this is going to be a long list, but make sure that you include both the emotional and financial support that you provide. Then it's about organizing this list into these top three categories that we found in our research. So to help illustrate this activity a bit more, we provided an example here on the screen. So Danielle and I went through 10, 20 advisor websites and read through their materials, their value props, their website content, etc., and created this fictitious value prop. So it's not based on any one advisor, but it's kind of an aggregation of real messaging that we found on live financial advisor websites. So as you can see on the right-hand side, we kind of pulled out phrases that could fall into each of these categories. And you should definitely see a huge red flag here in that behavioral coaching is completely missing from this advisor's value prop. So they're missing an opportunity there. Okay, step two. At this point, you have this long list of activities that you do for your clients, and they're in these great categories. Now it's about massaging the wording so that you don't turn people off. And we gave some tips here on how to do that for each of the top three categories. So when it comes to addressing client discomfort, you probably shouldn't go into that meeting and highlight their discomfort. Instead, you can highlight the ways in which your expertise can reduce anxiety, can promote peace of mind, can ensure that the person is on track to their financial goals. We even suggest using an example, right? For example, my current clients love working with me because they sleep better at night, right? They're not constantly worried about that financial decision that's been on their to-do list for weeks, and they keep pushing it off, right? They know they can talk to me and we can get it done. When it comes to behavioral coaching, we already know that wording is important. Many people don't like the term behavioral coaching. So instead, we can use colloquial language. We can provide an example. We can clarify that these are issues that we all face as human beings. When it comes to specific financial need, so when a client comes into your office and they say that they need help with this specific financial issue, you should let the client know that you can address that issue. However, you can go a step further than that. So advisors can sort of help that client connect that issue back to their deeper why. So this deeper why is partly their financial goals, but it's really what's driving their financial goals. And here's where we get to this topic of life goals, life values, which sounds very high level, but it's from these deeper conversations that you really get to know the client, that you're really able to personalize their plan, because as you're talking to them, you're discovering alongside them their goals, their needs, things that sometimes only come out through communication, through those discussions. So when it going back to that process that we started in step one, you have this long list. Now it's about taking each of those items and rewriting it using these ideas. And then it's about incorporating those phrases, those activities that you do into a 1 to 2 paragraph value prop. So again, we have our example here. On the left-hand side, you see the same fictitious value prop. On the right, you see our fixed up version, and we color coded here so you could see how we're trying to incorporate each of the three categories. So when it comes to client discomfort, we're specifically reassuring the client that we can help them achieve their financial goals. We're letting them know that we can help them navigate all the financial decisions, helping them save time, save worry. When it comes to behavioral coaching, we're giving examples, right? We're saying that we can help educate you, we can help guide you, make sure that you stay on track. And when it comes to specific financial need, yes, we do list out the common categories that, or the common needs advisors have to deal with. So retirement planning, tax management, wealth accumulation. But then we bring it back to goals. So always keeping goals at the forefront. Okay. Step 3 is more of a writing tip, but it's extremely important when you're trying to incorporate these key concepts. So when we're writing, we all sometimes fall prey to the curse of knowledge. So we live and breathe this stuff, and sometimes we write as if our audience is right there with us when they're not. So this usually results in content that's kind of muddled, where some of our key messaging is hidden behind these extra details that the client doesn't need to know at this first touch point with you. So when it comes to our activity, it's about taking that sheet of paper where you have your draft value prop, highlighting the areas where you're addressing these top 3 categories, and then taking a good hard look at whatever is not highlighted. And here's where the phrase kill your darlings really comes into play, because you kind of have to be very critical of each word, each phrase, maybe even entire sentences, and really think about if the client needs to know this at this first touch point with you. So again, we give an example. On the left-hand side, we have a value prop, which has all the categories. It's perfectly fine, but it is a bit lengthy. And on the right-hand side, we just cut the excess. So we cut out some details that sure are important, and maybe we'll feature them later on in the website, but maybe not at this first touch point with the client. And we also try to rearrange. So we know that emotional factors play a huge role here. So we made sure to start and end with an emotional factor. Okay, so to recap our activity here, when promoting better interactions with prospective clients using these insights, um, the activity kind of said to identify the ways in which you address the top 3 categories that we find drive hiring decisions. So those were discomfort handling financial issues, specific financial needs, and behavioral coaching. Then it's about working these topics into your messaging, which is going to involve some massaging. So we have to make sure we present these ideas in a subtle way so that clients don't get turned off. Um, and then it's about making your points clear, which is really about cutting the access and making sure you're only providing clients with the details they need to know when they're first meeting you. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a PDF format of this exercise and a more in-depth white paper if you want to dig into the details of the study. Okay, any questions?
Thanks, Samantha. That was always fascinating to sort of take a deeper look into some of the results of your research, and interesting to see how they seem to have evolved. There have been a few questions that have come through while the presentation has been going that I've kind of left to the end. Just to quickly answer a question that's come through now. The material will be made available to you and will be sent through via email, both the recording and the slides and the PDF that Samantha mentioned. So rest assured it will feature in your inbox. Samantha or Danielle, for that matter, did you do any research specifically with regards to high net worth clients?
Yeah, so we did do a correlational analysis to see if those with higher income or assets or older individuals were more likely to list a specific reason for why they hired their advisor. And we didn't really see any strong relationships there. So we did check, but no, nothing really stood out in that area.
Okay. Interestingly enough, this is a question that's more sort of, I think, one to consider or not consider. This is a bit of a quirky one, but do either of you actually have financial planners in your own portfolios?
Oh, good question. We've never been asked that before. I do not.
Not.
I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I do.
Okay.
But I would fall into, we have a category that is kind of like it was rolled into a service that you were receiving, that the financial planner came kind of with the service. And so that's how I came mine. So I did not have to have the hiring decision myself.
Yes.
It was made for me.
Now I thought, yeah, good to know the personal stuff as well. But another question here that's come through, when it comes to acquiring new clients, was there a best approach that actually came out as a result of the study?
Well, the insights themselves kind of answer that question, right? Of course, addressing the specific financial need, but also trying to address that client discomfort handling. I mean, if you look at the top 3 categories that we found in our research: client discomfort, specific financial need, behavioral coaching.
Mm. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
sorry, Danielle. I thought, Danielle, you were going to say something.
Oh, no,
No? Okay.
keep going.
So, but I would ask back to that person, do you mean like a specific type of marketing material, a specific messaging content? Like,
Mm.
dig into that question a bit more.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. It's probably answered in a few ways through the presentation itself. We can dig deeper on that one. I'll take that aside. Any insights on younger people and their psychology? Would I don't know if that would have been in the population sample in terms of demographics?
Yeah, so that's why we made sure to include age in the correlational analysis. So we always get questions on different demographic variables and if there's any differences. So we always double check, of course, but it's surprising how rare it is that we actually find an effect, that there's a difference between age or income or
Mm.
or amount of assets, which is always so surprising to people.
Yeah,
But it's kind of a reoccurring finding for us.
that is interesting. You've got this sort of age of instant gratification, and for the core sort of principles of the study to hold true is certainly, I think, one that would surprise many.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those ideas of that there's these stereotypes of people that maybe
Mm.
the younger generation's all going to be trying to get rich quick. Um,
Yeah,
and it could just be that you just know some people and that's kind of sticking in your brain a little bit.
yeah. The biases that you don't actually know you have, or opinions for that matter. Another question. One of the challenges the industry faces is the transition of wealth. I guess this talks to exactly that. Has the study seen any major differences between the answers of different generations? Okay, we've answered that one. That's all good. Sorry, these are coming up as I go through them. Do you think that we will all sound the same, so have to make ourselves stand out while still fulfilling the fields you emphasized?
I
Well,
don't think so. Yeah, and the reason why I will say that is because I think that what we see with financial advisors is that you all already have a very authentic to yourself approach for handling these things. And the stuff that we're talking about, it's a writing exercise, right? And it's the same kind of thing with writing, is that everybody kind of has their own voice. And so I think that one of the things where you will really start to see that, yes, there, if everybody's highlighting the same thing, it probably will start to sound the same, but you're going to go down and you're going to create a list of all the things that you do in particular. And also, like, how do you talk about that with your clients? How do you talk about that with people who you work with, other advisors who you might be working with, and how do you convey those things? And so even though it is going to be a lot of focusing on these big 3 categories of, specific financial needs, behavioral coaching, client discomfort, I think that everyone has their own practice, and the way that they act is based on who they are and who their clients are. And then that's also going to be individuated further by your own writing voice or your own voice in conversation.
Samantha, was there anything you wanted to add there?
no, I think that was well said. And
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add is that the the exercise here, what we wrote here, we're hoping that's just to get you started. It's really about addressing these 3 categories in any way that you can. So as Danielle mentioned, in your own voice, in your own style, with your own examples of working with your current clients. And I
Mm.
think what will come out is going to be very unique to you, to your voice, etc.
Yeah, okay. One last one. Did the cost of financial advice come into play, or financial services? I don't think it would have. Was was there any regard for that in some of the research?
Not so much in this arm, but I know
Yeah,
when it came to why people fire their financial advisor, we did incorporate a cost
yeah,
category. Um,
yeah.
but we didn't see
Yeah,
Okay.
it come up here.
yeah, we coded for the cost in this situation as well, but whereas for the firing piece, we found that that was one of the top 6 reasons why people fired their financial advisor. It didn't really come out to anything in this situation. And I know that that's kind of like, there's a lot of conversations going on right now about what is an appropriate cost for financial advising, especially on like an hourly level. And
Mm.
so it's definitely something that advisors are thinking about, and it's definitely important because we saw it come up as part of the reason why people fire their advisor. But in terms of this, at least why people identified that they hired their advisor, this wasn't a common thing that we saw as the primary reasons that we were given from our participants in the study.
Yeah. I thought that one stat on the sort of value attached to behavioral practice was, I think, 200 basis points, the study that Vanguard did. I thought that was interesting. I find it fascinating how in a lot of the research that comes out, as you mentioned, clients almost don't know what they don't know. I think that's what Ryan often says, what your colleague Ryan Murphy, and just the fact that even though behavioral understanding or behavioral approach is so important, when they actually rank it, it comes out bottom of the charts. So this research was great to sort of highlight that again, to build into approach and practice. One last question, and then we'll call it. This may have been answered already, but were there any differences based on the type of advisor or the services offered in your study?
Oh, that's a good question. So we actually did not ask for the type of advisor that they hired, which is something that I kind of wish we did ask, but our data does not dig into those details.
Yeah, okay. Apologies that one or two more have come through. So I know I said that was the last one. We'll just go through 2 more and then I'll answer the others offline. If prospective clients don't admit to the importance of emotional drivers, which clearly we've seen is sometimes the case, especially in terms of advisor appointments, how do you sell the value of it, or do you just have to say you offer it? I guess that kind of goes back to building it into your process and becoming, leading with that. But any advice there, or anything that the research talked to there?
Well, I think that the point is not that people don't admit it, that it's important. They're not admitting it in public to a person that they're face to face with. And I kind of see this as like performing a bit of a parlor trick, a little bit of mind reading. Because they're not going to come up and not going to say, I can't sleep at night. Well, some people do. I can't sleep at night. I'm worried about this. I think I'm making all these mistakes. I feel like I'm out of control on how I respond to market swings. They're not going to go and say that directly. But if you come into them and you say, hey, a lot of my clients say that they have issues, making good decisions when the market seems really volatile. And one of the things they really appreciate is that I'm able to help them take a step back and make good decisions in times of high emotion. It's like reading their mind. It's not that they don't already feel that inside. They probably do, but they're not going to talk about it. So it's not really selling it to them as much as it is stating something that they're not willing to state. And so that's why I think of it a little bit as like a mind reading trick.
Yeah, I do always say that, the number of hats financial advisors have to wear is certainly underestimated. So I guess you could throw fortune telling into that to a degree. Well, not fortune telling, but mind reading. Yeah, I think that's where we'll call it today. If there's anything we haven't answered live, we'll come back to you on email. Samantha and Danielle, thank you so much for the insights and for the research, particularly ahead of your evening in Chicago. And to all the attendees, we'll certainly send the collateral reference today through to you. In addition to the recording, if you've got any questions, please do feel free to engage your local points of contact in Morningstar or myself for that matter. And also keep an eye out for our next webinar invites. We do have an update on our medalist portfolios coming up at the end of this month. And next month, we continue with our practice optimization series with a cybersecurity webinar just ahead of cybersecurity month. So that's fairly appropriate. But thank you as always for your time. We value it, and we hope this has added value to you in terms of the behavioral side of our day today.
Any advice in this video is general advice prepared by Morningstar without reference to your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider the advice in light of these matters and any relevant product disclosure statement before making any decision to invest.